Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, sir.
I hope you are able to see my screen.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So let's start today's discussion. So far, we have considered, evaluated, explored basics working conditions setup required to provide reliable transfer for a transport layer, irrespective of what is my underlying network channel is. We started with basic theory of reliable data transfer protocols. We went through three versions. Then said we need to be efficient. And because of efficiency, we looked at go back and selective repeat. And now we start with TCP protocol, which is really being used. It was way back designed almost 1980, 40 years ago. They're still working the same way with some minor tweaks here and there. So what is the basic characteristics of TCP? First, it is a point-to-point protocol. Point-to-point protocol means one sender, one receiver, there is a one connection. It is not point to multi-point where one sender or many receivers. And that's the meaning of point-to-point. So one connection, two logical endpoints. It is not a multiple logical endpoints. And that is what point-to-point means. Then it is a reliable data transfer protocol. Just 1 minute, please. And we have seen what reliable means. We said reliable, no corruption, no duplicate delivery, no data loss, and in order. On top of that, TCP is also called byte stream or stream oriented protocol. And simple example you can probably look at is, let's say you call somebody and you start reading a book. And when you start reading a book, receiver at the other end is hearing what you are reading. When you turn a page, you are continuously reading, you're not saying a next page number or something. You're constantly reading, you turn your page, go to next page, but you continue reading. Can receiver figure out how you turn the page? No. Because you're continuously reading. So even though you're reading sentence by sentence or word by word, receiver hears word by word without bothering about whether it is first page, second page, third page. So when you start sending data, as a sender, you might send 100 bytes in one message, 200 bytes in another message, 300 bytes in another message. The receiver would get 1 byte at a time. So if you send three messages, let's say 100 byte, 200 byte, 300 byte, in a single read, receiver can get all the 600 bytes, or it might even get 1 byte and then read next 1 byte and so on and so forth. So TCP is reliable and called byte stream oriented, meaning it does not know if the sender has sent multiple messages or one message. It just sees the whole data as a single stream. Other example I can talk about, discuss is, let's say I laid a pipe, I'm supplying water. On the other end, you have a tap. And let's say on this side, I'm filling water. I'm pouring on. Now, whether I'm pouring from a bucket or from a glass or from something else, receiver does not know whether one bucket is over or one glass is over and the next bucket is sender is sending. Receiver sees a stream of drop by drops together and gets the bucket. So receiver has no clue how many times somebody's data he just see a stream of data coming in, and that's the meaning of TCP being stream oriented. UDP is message oriented. When you send one message, receiver get either full message or nothing. It does not get part of message now, part of it later, or will not get two messages together, something of that kind. So in a sense, there are no message boundary from the protocol perspective, if those have to be honored, application has to decide that what the message boundaries are. TCP does not provide. For efficiency reasons, it is a pipeline protocol. That means sender will keep sending data without waiting for an ACK till its buffer is allowed, or whatever the sliding window is allowed. And when we've seen the GBN, go back and or selective repeat, we have looked at, we've taken a fixed sliding window. TCP does not use a fixed sliding window. In fact, it keeps adjusting sliding window size based on the network congestion conditions, something of that kind. Because if you keep a much bigger window and there's a congestion packet or circuit, you want to do a lot more retransmit. If you keep it too small, you're making a channel inefficiently. So try to find right starting window size and keep adjusting. In all of our protocols, whether GBN or RDT, we looked at data communication only in one direction. In real life, communication happens in both the directions, and that's the meaning of full duplex. Full duplex means on a single channel, both people can communicate simultaneously at the same time. What would be half duplex meaning? Anyone like to explain what is half duplex mean? Akshay BR. Amravati.
Hello.
Yeah. Go ahead,
Sir,
tell me what is half duplex mean?
duplex means communication can be done from both the sides, but the responding is done from only one side.
No, that is not right. You probably know, but you're not able to express it. Anyone else? Can you give a layman example? Anusruti? Avinash?
Sir,
Yeah. What is half duplex?
sir, I
mean?
have to give example, sir.
Yeah, give an example.
Sir, while talking to the phone, sir.
So explain what is full duplex and what is half duplex with the example.
Okay, sir. The half duplex, sir, only transmit in one direction at a time, sir. And in full duplex, sir, transmission in both sides, sir, at a time, sir.
So when you talk on phone, is it a half duplex like we are talking? Is it half duplex or full duplex?
Sir,
Full
it is
duplex, sir.
full duplex, sir.
So can you give me example of half duplex?
So,
Sir,
walkie-talkie, sir.
Okay, yeah, walkie-talkie is one. Only one person speaks at a time. So channel supports communication in both directions, but permits communication at a time only in one direction. Other you can say example of a narrow bridge, there is only, let's say, one car can pass, and let's say bridge connects the two ends. So either car can go from A to B or car can come from B to A. So both are allowed, but at a time, only one direction would be allowed, and that is half duplex. And if it is a two-lane bridge, but car can go both directions simultaneously, that is full duplex. When you're talking like this in a conversation, voice conversation, channel allows full duplex. It is the human being they try to use as a half duplex. Because if both people speak same time, it will become chaos. So as a user, we use it as a half duplex, but channel is basically a full duplex. So TCP supports, provides full duplex connectivity, and how much the maximum segment size would be depends upon the link layer. For Ethernet, it may be 1460 bytes. For Wi-Fi, it could be 2400 bytes. For optical fiber, it could be 8000 bytes, and so on and so forth. It is connection-oriented protocol. That means you first set up a connection, and once the connection is set up, then you send the data. And because you're doing a connection setup, you also do a teardown. It supports flow control. Flow control basically meaning Sender can send only that much data which receiver can receive. Or in other words, sender cannot overwhelm the receiver. And my layman example would be, let's say you're feeding somebody at home. The person you are feeding, he is controlling how much you can serve. Because if the plate is full, you can't serve more. So the eater or the guest who's eating food controls how much you can serve. And in that sense, is the flow control. So how does connection management work? We basically said a connection has to establish like a phone call. Before you talk to anybody, you dial the number, you hear a ringtone, you hear callback tone, train, and then say hello, hello, and then say okay, then you talk. So till hello, hello, it becomes connection establishment. And when you set up the connection, you do agree what the protocol parameters are, how you're going to communicate, and related requirements, how much you can send me, what is my window size is, what is my buffer. All those details are set up and agreed upon during the connection setup. So typically you have let's say client or a server, the client running an application on the application layer, and this is my transport layer. Same as you have a server. Now before you can even set up a connection, initiate server must be ready to listen to the connection. If there is no server ready to listen to the connection, any attempt would be futile. You will not be able to connect. So first thing is, as you might have seen socket programming, a server would basically create a socket and invoke call accept, waiting for connection to come from the client. Then client will basically create a socket, will do a connect, and once it connects, then you get the connection establishment. Till the time you are basically running, you will see that your server is connection is in what is called listening state. And I'll probably show you during the next course of time. And once connection is set up, it becomes established state means connection setup is done. Now you can do data transfer. And once that happens, then basically goes to tear down phase closing state. Now to set up a connection, what kind of handshake message is required? First thing we can say, if you can do a two-way handshake, like human, hey, hello, how are you? You talk, and the moment you talk, let's talk, other person says hello, and connection is established. It looks very simple, and it typically works in normal life, but sometimes you face a problem, other guy is not even listening, then what do? Or he listens, but doesn't respond. Then you probably do again. So if I were to map this connection setup in terms of our TCP connection, we can basically say connect, request for a connection, another side says yes, accepted, connection accepted, and then you are established. This looks simple, but such a scenario is fraught with challenges and does not work quite some time. And let's look at what the issues are. If you just do two-way handshake, two-way meaning you have two messages, sender sending one message to initiate connect, other side says yes, connection accepted, and you are done. And challenges could primarily be, could be delays or packet loss, other things occur. You transmit, other guy may not even receive, or network may have delayed it, and you think the packet is lost, that may retransmit. And this kind of delays or packet loss could cause other issues, especially when we do retransmit a message. So let's look at what could really be happening. A simple case, client makes a connect, request for connection, and server responds with accepted, but my client times out. It believed at this point in time, it was waiting for this much. Till this time, it did not get a response, so client thought that my packet is kind of lost. It resends a packet to establish the connection again. Same packet to establish the connection again, and here the client sends the packet. At this point in time, it gets accept connection. Now client thinks this accept connection is because of this. The second retransmit packet, So on this connection, this follower talks and they close the connection, and whatever retransmitted packet the sender has sent, network delayed it far beyond and it reaches after the connection is closed. Now the server would think it is a new connection and send accept, connection accepted, client is not even there, but server would keep on waiting, allocate the resources and simply wait. So because of variable delays, server might be having open connections, but there's no need, and that could be a problem with two-way handshake. And we look at what we need to do, convert two-way to three-way handshake, and the way things work. Other possibility is we are doing a data transfer, we make a request connection, server establishes a connection, client again times out and makes a new connection, and it sends the data and doesn't get the actual data, so retransmit the data. So both the request, the retransmission of the connection request and retransmission of data reaches the server after they have done the closest connection. And server here would think it's a new connection, got the new data, it will respond to it, where though actually client is not even there. So simplistic two-way handshake really does not work. It will have a lot of problems at the server side, and hence TCP does not use two-way handshake. It makes use of three-way handshake. And we look at how does this three-way handshake work. Now we have said that, so we come to three-way handshake, but before, so we need that which is TCP is connection oriented, which is TCP is pipelined, TCP is transport layer has to do multiplexing, it has to do reliable meaning in case packet get lost, it has to retransmit, we need to have an ACK. So we need to support all that. So looking at all that, what should my TCP header or extra information that transport layer will add to the application data so that it can provide reliability? So firstly, the first basic part is multiplexing and demultiplexing. And to support multiplexing and demultiplexing, we need to have source and destination port. Destination port for delivery and source so that other side know which port we are using, we need to respond. We need to have sequence number and acknowledgement numbers. Why do we need sequence numbers? Would anyone like to answer? Or why do we need packet identification? Deva Dixit? BK Susmita? Bhavani KG? Bhuvna? Chetra? Why do we need sequence number? We look at sequence number in RDT 2.1.
For error detection.
To do what?
So for error detection, detecting if there's an error in the packet being sent.
No, sequence number is not for error detection.
To make sure that duplicate packets are not received.
Yes. Sequence, by using sequence number, receiver can identify whether it's a duplicate packet or not a duplicate packet. That is the role of sequence number. For error detection, we need checksum. And why do we need the acknowledgement for? Ashwini?
So that
So
the sender.
the data is received properly.
Let Ashwini speak, then I'll come to Dhananjay. Yeah. Ashwini,
So
why
that
do we need acknowledgement number?
the sender comes to know that the packet has reached the
Yeah, so to
destination
intimate the
successfully.
sender that packet has been received successfully at the receiver side. And these are the purpose of acknowledgement number. So we need this. And we need to have something called which is TCP, which is team oriented. So somehow we need to look at how do we differentiate between message boundary, not message boundary, but a byte by byte delivery. and we look at sequence number actually refers to the byte number in the whole stream rather than a packet number. Then we said our sliding windows should be keep on changing. We kind of fix the sliding window based on network conditions. So we need some window of the sliding window. We maintain, normally we do in order delivery. There's a requirement of reliable transfer protocol, but there are certain circumstances where you want out of order delivery of out of order priority basis. The connection has to be aborted or something has to be pushed, and you want to do out of order delivery. So normally we don't use it, but there should be provision and we should have that. We need checksum for the errors. Then we said it's connection oriented, so we should know which is the connection setup phase, which is the data transfer phase, which is the connection closing phase. So some indication of what the three different phases are. And then we said flow control. How much a receiver can receive, it should give an idea. So window size, receive window size, how much a receiver can receive, those kind of information, and how big the data is. And any other options, negotiating options, we look at those, but these are the basic requirements. We need our TCP header. So this is what you look at TCP header. First is source port number, destination port number for multiplexing and demultiplexing. Now, when you look at the sequence number, when TCP application sends data, transport layer looks at the data as an entire single buffer. So let's say you are transferring a file of 1 megabyte. The transport layer looks at the whole 1 megabyte a single packet, and sequence number indicates in the 1 megabyte which byte I'm sending starting from. Is it byte number 100 in the buffer? Is it byte number 1000? Is it byte number 10,000? And then we indicate how many. So I can say starting I'm sending byte number 1000, and in this packet there are 500 bytes. So that means this segment contains data from 1000 byte to 1499. And that's the meaning of sequence number. So sequence number always refers to byte in my buffer, offset of the byte from the beginning of the buffer, which is being sent, and acknowledgement number indicates it is called a forward looking. So far, what we have seen, acknowledgement number says that I have received. TCP uses a mechanism called forward looking. It basically says, what is the next byte offset I'm expecting now? So let's say if you send starting from byte number 100 with a size of 50, that means the segment contains byte from 100 to 149. The acknowledgement would be 150, saying next time I'm expecting data to start from 150. So ACK number indicates what is the offset in the next data I'll expect, and that is called forward looking. And then you have the flags. SYN is basically used for connection setup. FIN is used for connection closing. Reset is when something goes wrong, then that is indicated by the one entity that connection is broken. ACK indicates, so they indicate flag that I'm ACKing, so accept the first packet which is a connection initiation, ACK will always be set, and ACK will always be there. And then you have the other fields. In case we are sending urgent data, which receiver need to look at out of priority, not in the order, out of order, then this flag would be set called urgent pointer. So generally, urgent pointer is not used. There are special cases there, but most of the time you rarely use urgent pointer. There's another flag called push or P flag. P flag is again not used in general, and even somebody says it's basically ignored. Then we have a checksum. You looked at the internet checksum, same mechanism UDP, using pseudo header, UDP header and the data. You compute the checksum as in UDP, and then your push data is basically when it application sends data, when you get a success, when you use a socket call say send, actually data goes from OS application buffer to OS buffer. It does not mean that data has gone to the other side. Push flag is to indicate to the OS, please don't hold on, release the buffer as soon as possible. And that is where the push flag is set. But most of the time, internet, other places, push flag is simply ignored, and nobody really cares about the post flag. And then you have the receive window. I'm telling this is the buffer I have allocated for me to receive. So sender cannot send more data than my receive window indicates. Now see, receive window size is only 16 bits, and that means my maximum value is 2 raised to power 16, which is 64K. But actually receive with buffer could even be more than 64K. TCP technically allowed up to 1 gigabyte. So how do you allow 1 gigabyte? There's something called a scaling factor. Receive window, what is the scaling factor? How much I should multiply? And that becomes part of my options. Option would say scaling factor is 2. That means whatever value receive window will multiply by 2, or scaling with 4, multiply by 4. So that's where the options are used to indicate, let's say, what is my receive window size is, something of that kind. And then you have what is called header length. Header length meaning how big is the header? Because I have the options, and the options are variable. Some packet may not have it, some packet may have it. So my minimum header size is source and destination port, sequence number, acknowledgement number, header length, TCP flags, receive window size, urgent pointer, and checksum and urgent data pointer, and each is a 4 by 32 bits. So my minimum header is 20 bytes. 4 into 5, 20 bytes. This is the minimum header. And if we look at the options, there could be many. You might have options. Option includes up to 40 bytes. So TCP header varies minimum 20 bytes to maximum 60 bytes. So how do we indicate whether it is a 20 byte header or a 60 byte header? We have a field called header length, which we allocate only 4 bits. Now with 4 bits, value can maximum be 15. So how do we say it is 20 bytes header or a 50 byte header or a 60 byte header? So to the header length, you always multiply by 4. So the fixed scaling factor of 4. So whatever value in the header length is, you multiply by 4. So if I'm sending only header of 20 bytes, the header length would be 5. If I'm sending full 60 byte header, then this header length value would be 15, and that is how the header length TCP works. So how does TCP flag works? Which is SYN flag is used to basically do a connection setup or a handshake. It uses to do when you set up a connection, it sends SYN packet, you get SYN ACK. So A sends SYN packet, B will set SYN flag and a ACK flag, and A would again acknowledge. And because there are 3 messages, sender who want to reset connection, client sends a SYN packet, server would send SYN flag and ACK flag, that's called SYN ACK, and then the client would send ACK again. So we are using 3 messages to set up the connection, and that is where connection setup occurs. Other reset flag, you're trying to set up a connection on a given port, but there is no application listening on that port. So OS of that machine would basically give a response saying reset, there is no such application running. Or let's say the connection setup done, or whatever reason your connection is, the application is broken, it simply crashes, aborts. So that means this application is no more there. Now if client sends any data, there is no application there, OS will send again reset. So reset flag is to indicate there is no server or application which is receiving data on a given socket destination port for which packet has been sent. Finish flag is to do graceful connection closing. I reset a fin, otherwise will give me a FINAC, and whenever other side is ready to close, you'll basically do another fin and then do an ACK. So let's look at the flow messages, how does happen. So initially a client is in closed state, server has done accept, is in listen state, server is waiting for a new connection. Client want to set up a connection, it says connect. Connect is at the API level, socket API level, but what happens at the TCP level? It sends a TCP SYN message. A TCP SYN message goes, which contains some TCP flag SYN bit set and some random sequence number. So any value so that to send messages, person will be able to guess and cause an attack other reasons. So choose some random number for sequence number in the sequence number field, but set the SYN flag. Now receiver get this message. It says, oh, I've got a SYN message. It moves the state from listen to SYN received and sends a SYN and an ACK. And I'll show you the demonstration there. It sends the SYN message and ACK message together. And ACK value is whatever the sequence number was. We say ACK is always forward looking. So what next I expect? And so ACK is X plus 1, and it uses its own sequence number. And for SYN, it will send some sequence number is Y. So when I send a message, sequence number is for what data I plan to send. ACK is for what data I received from the other side. Understand the key difference, and probably look at an example, we'll do that. Once the client receives the SYN ACK, it establishes the connection and sends the ACK message. And in the ACK, it will say Y plus 1, because whatever sender chooses a sequence number, and it becomes Y plus 1. And then this also becomes a connection established state. So this way, it is a three-way handshake. It's also known as SYN, SYN-ACK. First the SYN message, then SYN and ACK, and because of the three messages, it is known as SYN, SYN-ACK message, and this is called three-way handshake. Let me see if I can show you the connection setup. So let's say I am running on a MacBook, and I have another machine. I am running Ubuntu, and let's say I run my server on port number 33. So if you look at you'll see port number 33, it is basically listen state, server is listening. Now I'll, from the client, my Ubuntu IP address is, I'll connect. So first sends a SYN message to get a SYN ACK, and I can run a WhatsApp capture to see what is happening. So let me run vnic 0, I'll indicate port number 3333, run, and let me send a message. So you see first message, transmission, it says look at the TCP flags, and these are the flags here. So you see this message has basically SYN flag. There are other flag which has become an advanced TCP, let's not look at that, looking over key 6 flag. So first message sent by the client is SYN flag. Second is the ACK from the server. It will contain both SYN and the ACK. So it has the SYN flag set, and it also has the ACK flag set. And then the ACK message, third message from the sender, it has the ACK flag. Now let's look at the sequence number. First message, it basically says, if you look at the sequence number, it is basically saying raw sequence number is this. Sorry, here, this is what I'm doing. Raw sequence number is this. Logically, you can say sequence number is 0, because everything would be with respect to this raw sequence number, and say next sequence number would be 1. So if you look at the ACK, now the other side is sending its own sequence number, but giving an ACK of 1. And giving an ACK of 1, and then it will sender sends ACK, it also sends ACK of 1. So both sides are said they're ready to send data, and they transfer data. You'll see data is coming with respect to sequence number. So let's look at this state transition, and we'll look at data transfer as well. From final state machine perspective, the single state machine, I'm trying to depict both client and the server. So this is the client server socket, ready for accept. That means the listening state. On the client side, it sends a SYN message. It goes to a state called SYN sent. And this is a SYN message. You make a event is, you make a connect call. SYN message is sent. And when server receives SYN message, it sends SYN ACK with ACK number as X plus 1. And this message goes, it receives this SYN ACK message with sequence number Y from the receiver and its own ACK number. It chooses the sequence number X, it gets the ACK of X plus 1, it sends the ACK, And at this state, both are kind of established, and this is what we have done. So you can also run between two of you. You can set up a connection, run a WhatsApp capture, like what I have done, and then see the packet capture and look at what the communication is. Now, how does sequence number really work? We look at the window and then do a data transfer as well. Again, we have the same window. We're looking at a single buffer. So this is my single buffer, starting with the offset of 0, and the whole buffer. So TCP is stream oriented. So sequence number basically corresponds to bytes in the individual one, and this indicates what has been acknowledged so far. Yellow indicates this data has been sent, yet to be acknowledged. Blue indicates data are yet to get from application send it, and this blue and yellow and blue is my basically sliding window size, and this is where I don't even yet to get the application. So this indicates, and same way this window size n. The window size n keeps adjusted. So we look at the sequence number. It is basically in a given byte. Sequence number indicates offset of the first byte in this segment I am sending now. And therefore the sequence number indicates, it does not say first message, second message, third message. It always indicates offset of the first byte which I'm sending in this message. And same is true for acknowledgement, indicating what I expect next. And that is what the acknowledgement indicates. And it's cumulative ACK. So even if previous ACKs are lost, if I receive the next ACK, this indicates data till that time has been received. If TCP receives segments out of order, it is up to the implementer to decide whether to keep in the buffer or don't keep it. Keeping in the buffer would certainly bring more efficiency, avoid retransmission, but if receiver want to discard it, then sender to retransmit. So most TCP stack today implement buffers and they store out of order. In LDR TCP bit is left, it is not part of TCP specification, left to the implementer. And that's the way it indicates. So let's look at for timeline sequence diagram, how does this sequence number and ACK work? Then I'll send the data on actual communication and show you that as well. So I said, user is sending only one data, starting with some, it has sent up to 41 characters, and now sending 42nd character. So sequence number is 42, 1 byte of data, and receiver would send an ACK of 43. Its own sequence number would be 79. It's an ACK of 43, and it's echoing back the data, and that is how communication takes place. So let me send a message, hello. Am I audible? Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So I sent 5 characters. So look at my data. This is where I'm sending my data. And my sequence number, if you look at it, is 1. It's relatively 1 to my offset. But what is the ACK sender would be sending? This is the ACK packet. It says ACK number is 7. So actually I sent 6 characters, 5 for the hello and 1 for the new line. So if you look at the data, hello and the new line character, so actually 6 characters were sent, and so receiver is saying I received up to 6. Now next I'm expecting is 7. So next time you type something, it will basically sequence number would be 7. Let's look at next data. This is sequence number 7. If you look at sequence number 7, and what would the ACK be? I've sent 8 characters here. So receiver would send 7 plus 8, expecting next in the stream 15-1. So if we look at the ACK, it would say ACK of 15. Now let's go to the receiver and said, let it also send some data. I received, let's say, now receiver is sending, so send about, let's say 8 plus 4, 12 plus 5, 17 plus 5, about 22. If we look at the sender data, the receiver side, your sequence number is 1, but totally 22 characters. So my sender would send the ACK of 23. So if we look at its own sequence number is 15 and ACK of 23. So if my sender, I said, so I'm sending about 3 plus 4, 7 plus 3, 10 plus 2, 12 plus 6, 18. I'm sending 18 bytes and my sequence number is 23. And I send about, we are in a class and this is what I'll be sending next. And look at that. So whatever character I'm sending, ACK is saying about 13 or whatever, acknowledgement number 33. So send me that, and that is what, so look at it, keep on sending. So ACK is indicating what I expect next from you. Sequence number indicates what is the offset of the first byte in this message. Like you might have seen, when I send this first message, offset of H is 1. If you look at the whole stream, hello, welcome, we are in a class, it is a single buffer. Hello starts at 1, W starts at 7, V starts at maybe 15, and so on and so forth. And that's how things work out. And that's the way you need to look at. So sequence number corresponds to what is the offset of the first byte in this message which I'm sending, and ACK corresponds to what is the next I expect from you, or means I receive data till ACK minus 1. So we have a separate sender buffer and we have a separate receive buffer. Receive buffer is what I am receiving, send buffer is what I need to send. So each application maintains two different buffers. Sequence number corresponds to buffer being sent. ACK corresponds to receive buffer, what I've sent so far. And if I receive data in order, that is the only data will be delivered to the application. And that's the way it works. So I recommend you can run through NC. NC is available on Windows. You have to download it, play with it, and communicate, run Wireshark, and understand the flow and TCP headers. Or you can even do capture Google or your own college website and look at how does my different sequence numbers or TCP connection would work. So run Wireshark capture, access college website or any of your favorite website, look at the packets, analyze TCP connection, and then you can actually see all the headers. So if you look at Wireshark, I can see all the headers here. My source port number, destination port number, sequence number, acknowledgement number, then header length, which is 8 implies 32. So if you look at, this is 80 first 4 bits, 32. My window size is 2048, 2058. This is the actual value, but because of scaling factor is 64 as part of the options. So if you look at the options, we should have options, timestamp option, length 10, and there are, we need to, other options would have been given earlier. Different options, and based on the options, I need to look at the timestamp. Is 10 basically implicate multiply by factor? I need to figure out and tell you. And that way it indicates what should be my multiplication factor. So even though my value happens to be 2058, actual value in the buffer, which is, if you look at window size value, the scaling factor is 64. given, and then you have all the other options there, and then value of urgent pointer and value of checksum. You can do same thing with UDP header as well, communicate with UDP, send things up, compute your own checksum and verify your header is right. And that's how TCP basically would work. So this is the data communication phase. We have seen the connection setup phase, and you can write a simple program. If you're running a Linux machine, you can run one side. I'm doing both side data transfer. Server is sending data, client is sending data. You can run the program on the Unix shell script and you see data transfer happening both directions. So I'm running a bidirectional data transfer, or you can do when you do browser or anything check, you can see what is being transmitted. Look at those. If you need to close a connection closing requires sending a FIN. So if I need to close a connection, so let me close a connection. Let me go there and see if I can close the connection. So let's say I exited, close the connection. So my other side is sending a FIN message. If you look at in the flags, my flags are here. You have a FIN flag set. This is a FIN flag, which indicating connection request. Other side is saying, I want to close the connection. You get the egg. And this side, client side also says the FIN. So it is closing connection is done in two half messages. One side can close the connection. That does not mean other side has to close the connection right away. So essentially, you can combine FIN and FINAC, or one side. So look at the browser. When let's say you're doing a file download. When you're doing a file download, you make a request, do a HTTP connection, and once you give a file name and URL, you don't need to maintain any connection because you are not sending any more data. You are done with your part of data sending. So you can initiate closure from your side, but server has to keep sending the file. And server may take next 1 minute to keep sending data. So server can still keep sending you data even though your request will be closed. So connection is closed from your side, meaning you are no more sending data, but you can still receive data. And once server decided it's done the data, then it can do a close. And that is what you'll basically see in a timeline sequence diagram. So one side, at the API level, you make a close. The TCP transporter will send a FIN message with FIN bit set with whatever sequence number, and to indicate other side would basically increase the act, whatever the value sequence number was, it will increase by 1, send the act. Now this server can still keep sending data. And if I keep sending data, the client will keep receiving, and only when server sends the FIN message, then it will send the act, and only at this point in time, this connection is closed. Now, because this connection closure occurs in two parts, one is on one side, one is on other side. So this is also called half close. This is also half close. So you can say connection setup happens in three-way handshake, FIN, FINAC in a single shot, but a connection closure happens in two number of two-way handshake. First two-way handshake to closure from one side, another two-way handshake to closure from the other side. And that is how the connection closure occurs. So we looked at connection setup, we looked at data transfer, and we looked at tear down. So this is actually indicating a finite state transition diagram. And you can look at the FSM, it's a single diagram for both client and the server. So if you are looking at the TCP communications, I would recommend you to analyze and go through. So I'll stop here, and next we'll discuss next feature of how does the communication occurs, what could the possibility be, can the SYN mechanism be used to cause attacks? We look at SYN flooding attack that we'll discuss, and the basics of communication scenario, timeout, reliability in the next lecture. So any questions you can please ask, let me know, and we should be fine. If no questions, we're running out of almost closing to the class, so I'll close it. If a question, please ask, otherwise I'm done. Thank you.